Access Sacramento presents a special hometown sports broadcast. This program is funded in part by a grant from the Sacramento Metropolitan Cable Television Commission.
Good evening and welcome to another installment of Access Sacramento's Hometown Sports. Hello, I'm Will James along with the Imperator of Analysis, Hall of Famer Jim Dimino, and we have something to share that's new and different on our sports menu today. Looking back and moving forward, 20 years of high school football in the Sacramento area. Our theme connects the past with the present as we recall some of the memorable stepping stones that mark the path of high school football history in the Sacramento area between 1996 and the present. We'll discuss some of the specific high-profile guidelines and focal points that regularly draw ongoing attention to the rules and policies that form the present state of high school football within the CIF and the Sac Joaquin section. And as part of our retrospective, we'll also trace the parallel course taken by Access Sacramento 20 years ago with the birth of Game of the Week and regular televised games on local cable TV. To accompany us on this excursion, we've assembled a special all-star panel comprised of 5 of the most successful and highly regarded head football coaches from the area high schools, and 2 of the most respected officials from the NCOA to share a multitude of experience and insight as we recall some of the most significant and impacting events during the progressive march of high school football during the past 20 years. Along the way, we'll filter in some of the landmarks that Access Sacramento and the Game of the Week have pounded into the Sacramento area turf. Now, let's meet the coach members of our distinguished Blue Ribbon All-Star panel. From Sheldon High School, with 18 years of varsity coaching experience at 4 schools, a winner of 5 league titles, 2 section championships, and a 2-time Coach of the Year, Coach Joe Catolico. From Del Campo High School, with 18 years of varsity coaching experience at 3 schools, winner of 8 league titles, 2 section championships, a 2-time Coach of the Year, a USA California High School delegate to the National Football League Hall of Fame, a National Football Foundation Hall of Fame Red Smith Award recipient, a 5-time Optimist All-Star head coach, and CIF Sac Joaquin Section Sportsmanship Award recipient, Coach Mike Dimino. From Monterey Trail High School, with 20 years of varsity coaching experience at 4 schools, 1 league title, 1 section championship, a 2-time section finalist, a multiple-time Sports Focus Coach of the Week, a 4-time Coach of the Year, Coach T.J. Ewing. From Franklin High School, with 23 years of varsity coaching experience at 3 schools, winner of 6 league titles, 1 section championship, a 5-time Coach of the Year honoree, the Cal Rasmussen Honorary Coaches Award recipient, a National Football Foundation Hall of Fame Red Smith Award, and CIF Model Coach Award recipient, Coach Mike Johnson. And following a brilliant stint at Del Oro High School and newly installed at Capital Christian High School in his 16th year of varsity coaching. Winner of 7 league titles, 6 section championships, 3 Northern California titles, a CIF state championship, a 3-time CIF state finalist, an 11-time Coach of the Year award recipient, the National Football Foundation Red Smith Award recipient, a 4-time Optimist All-Star coach, 2-time Character Combine Award winner, 4-time Holiday Classic All-Star coach, and 2-time USA National Team coach, Coach Casey Taylor. I'll tell you, Jim, the last time I saw a lineup that strong, it was called Murderers Row.
Yeah, we got that football version of Murderers Row right here with us tonight.
And that's not the end of our guest panel. For our next segment coming up shortly, just ahead, we'll also introduce the elite of area officials to join us. But right now, as we turn back the clock 20 years and begin our flashback in 1996, Sacramento area high school football, it was flourishing at that time as Elk Grove was dominating in its competition, and perennial powerhouses Grant and Jesuit, among others, were also setting the standard of excellence. As we continue now, our first topic is going to be a sense of recognition for Sacramento area football. As we know, bragging rights are an intangible element that always ignites a sense of competition, wherever it may be. And for our coaches panel gathered here today, and especially those who arrived here from out of town before becoming part of this Sacramento area community, we'd like to find out what your perception was of Sac area high school football in terms of its prominence, its level of respect, and its reputation compared to other areas of Northern California at that particular time. Let's lead off with High C, Joe Catolico, and get his impressions.
Thank you. No, I've been here for 12 years, coaching the Bay Area prior in the San Jose area, and always had a very high opinion of the level of football played in Sacramento, and that's really what brought me here to coach, was the opportunity to be involved in high school football in this region and the reputation that it had. And obviously those things have all rung true in the time that I've been here, and I've really enjoyed it and continue to enjoy coaching against gentlemen like these guys right here.
TJ, having had prior experience out of this area, what was your perception upon arriving here and taking on the Monterey Trail position?
Well, there was many coaching clinics and meeting coaches from the Sacramento area in the Bay Area. We knew the football up here was connected to youth football. So I thought that the area up here, the football was more participated at the youth level than we're at where I was coaching at. And I knew the players had more experience coming into high school with the game of football. So when I got here, I realized quickly that that was true, and that the information that the kids had before they got in was greater. So we were getting a different level of kid in terms of their knowledge of the game of football immediately. So that's the thing I was excited about, was just the area and the information. The coaches and teachers out here do a great job teaching the game, and I wanted to be part of that. So when I got here, it was definitely an elevation when that happened.
Casey?
Well, I wasn't from the out area. I grew up in Sacramento. I went to school at Oak Ridge High School, graduated in '88. But started coaching in '93 out at Oak Ridge, and Oak Ridge was a small school, and today they've grown so much from there. But to see it go from the late '90s and go from there, and then go to Rockland a couple years, and then I think my stint at Del Oro, watching it grow, and just I really feel with a lot of the schools in our area of taking those chances to play out of section and really trying to play those teams around the NorCal area and out of state and in LA, I think really gave us a chance to see where we were at as a group and kind of challenge a lot of the programs around here to step it up. And I think we've had a lot of success outside. I think it's really brought a lot of attention to our area. I think we have a lot of great coaches, which really help too. A lot of great coaches, a lot of great programs with great communities that really believe in the key aspects of with the kids using football as a vehicle to teach life lessons to these kids. And I think that the programs have done a great job with that, and people are seeing what we're accomplishing on and off the field. And I've just seen it grow a ton over since my 25 years coaching.
Yes, sir.
I want to add one thing with Casey. I was doing a ball game at UOP many years ago when you were an assistant at Oak Ridge, and I ran into a couple of players who were ready to move from JV to varsity and had played up there. And I knew Coach Watson, and they said all kind of great things about you. And I said, God, I don't know how this guy cannot be a head coach. And I heard them talking outside the press box at the halftime. I said, oh, where are you from? Oak Ridge. And they said, so they gave me a lead on you, and they were absolutely right. This was a long time ago.
Yeah, well, that's where I got my start, and I appreciate Mark giving me an opportunity. And I always wanted to be a head coach back when I was 23 and I got out of college. And I think that's kind of one of the problems we have right now, us being in our 40-somethings. We really have lost that generation behind us. And because of all just everything going on today, I just feel like we're in jeopardy of losing that next generation of guys that want to be head coaches in their 20s and 30s. And I think it's very important for us as guys to mentor some of those guys to keep that going, because obviously the state of our game on a lot of levels is under question. And I feel like if we don't have those things in place as we move on and out of our profession here, we might have some issues. So,
Mike Johnson, if I recall correctly, when we shared some information previously, your varsity coaching career started at an unusually young age, putting you now at 23 years.
I might be one of the older guys here. And what's interesting, and I think about all of us, it didn't seem that long that we were the upcoming young guys.
Sure.
And we're not patting ourselves on the back, but I mean, people say, Joe Catalco, one of the new young coaches in the area. God, it didn't seem like it was that long ago. And we're starting to feel like the senior roundtable here, talking to our youth. I started in the southern part of the section at Lincoln High School. And back in those days, the southern and northern schools didn't play each other very often. And the big reason was it was a bloodbath. Because the Sacramento team, we couldn't compete with the Sacramento teams. And that's one thing we did at Lincoln and Stockton, is we said we have to venture out of our area a little bit and learn what real football's about. And we did, and we started playing Sacramento schools. And I remember traveling up just how well game management was, the fields, the bands, the crowd. And it really started to hit me that I think this is where all the really good coaches end up, as they go north. Because we'd worked really hard to create a very good program there. We won the section in 2000. Felt like we had everything going, but my goal was I said I want to go north, and that's why we waited for Franklin High School to open up in 2002, and felt that was a great time to go up and join all these great coaches. And there's just I agree. I think the coaching is just fabulous, especially in the Sacramento area, and it makes you coach. It makes you work. That's why we do this. So it's been a pleasure to coach up here.
Well, Coach Dimino, you've had the helm at multiple high schools, done wonders at Hiram Johnson with a bare minimum of what I would consider typical assistance from administration and school, and marvelous career now at Del Campo, ongoing. Being a local guy all along, your perceptions as you entered your varsity coaching tour and now well entrenched in it, what have you seen evolve over this period of time in terms of our area?
In 1999, I was an off-campus head coach at Hiram Johnson, and we went down and played Archbishop Mitty, who has a very traditional, very strong football program. We were very worried going down there, and we lost in the last 14 seconds of the game. But seeing football progress from then to now, I think it's very obvious on the state bowls, seeing that the Sacramento teams, how they perform, your Del Oros, your Folsoms, Rockland, Granite Bay, and actually any team that's been up from the Sac Joaquin section is very obvious, because when we first started the state bowl, the Southern California teams, without a doubt, were getting the best of the Northern Cal. And right now, it seems to be it's pretty even. And a lot of those schools down south have a lot more students in their school than the Northern California schools. such as Long Beach Poly or some of those schools, you're talking about 4,500 or 4,000 kids playing a lot of the schools going down here to represent us, whether it's Del Oro or Folsom and Granite Bay and Rockland and some of the other schools too. You're looking at 1,900 to 2,100 or 2,200 students dealing against 3,000 students at another school. So I've seen it as a head coaching perspective, doing it for 19, this will be the 19th year. I thought we already had good head coaches and good football programs in Sacramento, but I think now it's even way stronger over the period that I've coached.
Well, that's wonderful testimony there, and I quite agree. So I guess it could easily be said that recognition of Sacramento area high school football, the degree of power that it held, was certainly strong at the close of the 20th century, anticipating a grand entry into the 21st century, the new millennium. And changing times brought about inevitable new wrinkles in what we consider the local football landscape, and to Access Sacramento's television coverage of high school football. Early in the new millennium, the CIF originated a long-awaited state championship playoff structure comprised of a 2-day, 5-game format. And as we know, longtime Sac Joaquin Section Commissioner Pete Sacco was one of the strongest advocates to try to get that put in place.
Well, he certainly was. However, the prowess and the recognition of Sacramento area and Northern California high school still, suffering major setbacks down south in the early stages of state competition. And still, Pete was very persistent, and he and I talked about this for years and years. And he led the way for the 10 section commissioners, including himself. Southern California had won 9 out of 10 matchups in a very dominating fashion, placing a Spectre over NorCal as being overmatched and inferior to Southern California. That stigma lasted until about 2008, and then we had a great thing happen. A monumental year for local high school ball that produced a defining moment and a historical achievement, changing that perception forever. And now Sacramento High School went down there, matched up with the #1 team in the state, #4 ranked nationally, Long Beach Poly, having more players in the NFL than any high school in the country. And that matchup was something else, and most people didn't feel Grant had a chance. And I'm sure you guys either saw part of the movie, the book, whatever. But as we know, nothing could have been further from the truth as Mike Albergini's Pacers really captured the moment, a historic season with a dramatic come-from-behind storybook victory over a very heavily favored Jackrabbit team, right in their own backyard, defeating them 25-20 in a classic battle carried on live TV. And this was great exposure for Sacramento football. This pretty much set the stage. I mean, we knew the area, Sac was good, but this really set the stage. So as we look at this winning 15-yard touchdown pass here, if we can bring it up, and if not, we'll talk about it, from Capel Kinnisetti, who later went by, as you know, he's such a big guy, an older-looking guy, went down to Arizona State as a linebacker, not just a quarterback. He threw that game winner, and we do have a highlight on that. If we can bring it up now, we'll, and if not, we'll bring it up later. He hit McCauley in the end zone, and of course, setting up that touchdown was Booker, at times known as Butler or Booker. As you know, he's a running back for Denver now. And
okay, let's take a look.
Yeah, 55-yard touchdown gives them the lead. What else would you expect from Melvin Richardson at this point?
Up by 1, Poly looking good, but Grant makes a statement on their final drive, both to Poly and to the state.
Yeah, well, Booker especially makes that statement. 22 carries, 96 yards. Don't see that a lot.
Yeah, but Kinnisetti, ooh, game winner right there.
Yeah, McCauley pulls in his 8th catch, 134 yards, 2 touchdowns. Unbelievable.
With a minute 11 left, it looked like Poly could kind of get something going, but on 4th down, literally just not enough.
Man, I still can't believe it, man. I'm still shocked. Man, I just, there's no words I can, explain how I feel right now, but just very thankful, everyone giving us the opportunity to CIF. Thank you for voting us in. I told you we're going to bring one home. I told you North Cal we're going to bring one home, and just excited, man. Well, yeah, since JV year, we've been playing together for 3 years. We have a lot of chemistry, and we have a different language. All we got to do is just look at eye contact, and we know what each other's going to do.
Capelli and Devontae, have been the sledgehammers in our offense. And it took a long time to get us to be able to get Devontae loose. But Capelli stood there and got hit and kept working. I mean, he's got the heart of a lion.
Whether you attended the game, saw it on television, what have you, when that final gun sounded, when that ball game was over, at that exact moment in time, collectively, what were your thoughts as to how it affected Sacramento area football, your particular team, your opponents, your players, the belief in something special that had been accomplished after Northern California had been trounced for the previous 2 years?
Sure, I remember watching them play on television, watching the Grant Long Beach Poly game, and then also watching that same year St. Mary's, who had beaten us in the final, go down and be real close to Cathedral Catholic from San Diego, and really feel like kind of what some of the gentlemen spoke about before, that the notions that we had of the strength of Sacramento football and Sac Joaquin section football in the larger sense was really apparent at that time, and that was really sort of a landmark. Especially, like you said, against a Long Beach Poly, which is a nationally known, program that's put more guys in the NFL than any other high school. To go down and do that, I think, really legitimized Sacramento football in the eyes of people throughout the state.
Was that an inspiration for your squad, TJ?
Well, even before that, I have ties to Washington State. So the thing I loved about Grant and what I always, coach program at Grant High School, and what he did was in 2006 they beat Bellevue High School, and I don't know if a lot of people even know about that they actually shut them out after Bellevue had beaten De La Salle and broke their streak. So credit to Grant in terms of going back up there and kind of bringing back the idea that California football is very, very, very good, and that was something that I had known about that, and I'll never forget it, because I was really excited about that. And them going in and beating Long Beach, I knew they'd beat Long Beach, probably because, Grant kids take their football seriously. And that's what the Valley in this area, they take football seriously. It's important to them. And so that didn't surprise me. They came down and drove down, because that's the heart of the area. That's what we do. We play football. This is what's serious. So just a lot of praise to their program, what they've done. And from then, everybody kind of believed in, and it just started piling in those bowl games. So, yeah.
Quite a moment.
Yeah.
Very big.
Yeah, for me, I think one thing we're leaving out is they were selected from the Open that year. So with De La Salle being in the NorCal, there was a big debate on why they should be the Open champ and playing there. So that was really a big thing. Getting back to playing other people, they played the state champion from Idaho up at Idaho State. We were up there with them also. They beat Highland up there, and they also traveled to Utah that year and played Alta, I believe. And so when it came down, them being undefeated in I think De La Salle had lost one game that year. They gave Grant the Open invite, which was a big deal in itself, and them going down to participate, that's where everybody thought they'd get blown out. I think for us, and being around those guys and them having to go down there and do what they did, I think it just really opened the door, at least for our program, to go, hey, this can happen. A state championship or playing in a state game, we've got an opportunity to do that, and it really gave us inspiration in our program to build and try to work towards that. And I think that was just a big momentum for us and in the program we had at Del Oro.
Yeah. All right. Michael.
So in a little different perspective, with our own programs, we take such pride with our guys and our team and our community, and we take that to playoffs. And if we don't make it to playoffs, I know for us, we want to root for our Delta League teams, because that's our league. Those are our guys, our coaches, our friends. So you root for them, but it was different too, because this was a whole nother level. And I remember how excited my kids were that somebody from our section was playing in the big game, not only playing, but playing to win. And I remember when they won, there was a buzz within our campus and our program, because even non-football players watched that game. And it's like breaking the ceiling. They broke through. And I'm sure all of our teams that next year, they worked harder in the weight room. They ran harder during conditioning, because it opened the floodgates. It really did, if you think about it, to what we could do as programs. And even if my team hasn't been there, but you've seen other teams win it. We've seen Del Oro go there. We've seen Granite Bay, Grant, Rockland. It's happened. So, you've got that little carrot in front of them. And that was that first time where you went, wow, like this is special. And it did. I don't know if we really knew it was going to create the burst of success that we've seen in our section. But I think that was that first point that changed everything out here.
Major boost in the aspect of pride in itself.
Correct.
Most people, as Casey mentioned, they said, I'm sure the people down south are saying, how could they put these guys in an open division? Like you said, Casey, it was very controversial. And of course, that they more than paved the battle. And then after that, so many of our local teams got to play and win championships. We got one right here and Folsom and so forth, and Rockland and those teams. It's incredible. Mike, what do you think?
Well, we had the opportunity to do 7-on-7 with Grant that year twice, and got to know our players got to know their players a little bit, and it made it extra interesting because I was one of the ones thinking I had Long Beach Poly had such a pedestal on how talented they were, and I didn't know. I really thought that Grant might get beat solidly. So, although rooting for him the entire time. And so when we saw him play, it was no mistake about it. I thought they were the superior team, and I was actually surprised there. It kind of came down to the end, but they represent the open division because it was very controversial, like all the coaches said, because everyone thought De La Salle should be the obvious open. And Grant, again, you're looking at a school that's in about 2,000, maybe 1,900 students. The fact that we did 7-on-7, we were thinking, all our kids were watching and going, oh, I don't know, but they solidly won. So it made us happy for Grant, and it was really obviously awesome for the Del Paso Heights area and to see the parade that they had. And it really, I think, also brought a lot of recognition, not that he hasn't had any or deserved it, as Coach Alberghini. The fact that he had won, and what he's done for that community and what he's done for that football program is amazing.
Truly.
Especially that many years.
Boy, what a history.
And no disrespect to Casey, but it was a public school. And I just happen to be a public school guy, and to see a public school of guys, and the Grant kids are all from that area. And a lot of the Southern Cal schools, they're factories, they're football factories. I think that gave me a little joy too.
Well said, sir. Lots of changes, and certainly the breakthrough in 2008 by Grant High School was such a monumental victory, brought about certainly a tremendous change of mind in everybody's opinion about where the balance of power was. Well, in the fall of 1996, Access Sacramento launched new programming. It was the game of the week, and a significant change, or two or three, have run a parallel course in these changes of local high school football coverage during the 20-year span. The Capital City Game of the Week became the Hometown Sports Game of the Week. Additionally, our TV dial position on Comcast cable switched from channel 73 to channel 17. Our coverage radius that initially allowed us to travel south and televise the Sac Joaquin Section Championship games in Stockton from Stagg Stadium on the UOP campus. It was reduced, and our coverage was confined within the Sacramento County limits. And our coverage was elevated from tape delay to live coverage. Upgrades of a new high-definition broadcast truck changed things for us, and a new television studio control room, as you gentlemen have seen here. So we're going to take a break right now. When we come back, we'll delve into one of the ongoing topics of great interest, and that would be open enrollment. We'll be right back.
You know, the most important lesson you can teach your kids about playing sports is concussion signs and symptoms. After a hit to the head, if they have any concussion signs like blurred vision or headache, they need to stay out of play until they're checked by a healthcare professional. Play safe when it comes to concussion. When in doubt, sit them out. To learn more, go to cdc.gov/concussion. This is the other thing you can teach them. Comes in handy.
Welcome back to Access Sacramento's Hometown Sports and our special presentation of looking back and moving forward 20 years of high school football in the Sacramento area. And Jim, I know this is a topic of great interest to you as well as our all-star panel of coaches, and that would be open enrollment.
Well, it is very interesting because, as you know, as we go around and I attend practices and our weekly games, you hear this over and over again, what open enrollment has done. Unlike earlier decades in the 60s and the 70s, when teams like Mira Loma and El Camino were dominating and Christian Brothers were dominating, Cordova was in there too, the kids were coming from the neighborhood schools. Okay, 1964 in the Mira Loma El Camino ball game where El Camino won, and I was there at 7-6 in the last minute and 10 seconds. We had moved bleachers in to fill all around the end zone of the stadium. And at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, we were just finishing our last PE class, and Hal Athen and I heard that music and sound and said, what's going on now? The people were lined up out the street, out El Camino Avenue, still trying to get in to get seated at that ball game. And I know this was before your guys' times and probably, you know, more in my area when I began coaching in the late 50s. So, you know, I'm like ancient history up here. But I recall those days vividly. And then, of course, things changed. So we knew we were getting everybody from Marconi to Arden Way, because Rio got Arden Way to the river. And before Mira Loma was built, we got everybody from the freeway to the river. If you think about that today, it was incredible that the athletes we were drawing from. And it was only San Juan and El Camino in that San Juan district. Well, times changed. Neighborhood boundaries determined where student athletes were enrolled. But as time marched on, the 80s, certainly the element of open enrollment got created, and it's changed the game dramatically. And I'm going to talk about things like the impact it's had on the game relating to transfers, school size, division classification, etc. So we go from a league like the San Juan, the Capital Valley Conference, the original Capital Valley. Here you had all those 9, 10 high schools all in the same league. It was great. Attendance was great. The competition was great. The travel was little to speak of. You know, if you could think about it, if you could create such a league by you making all things equal almost. Every school had somewhere between 1,600 to maybe 2,000. So that's the way it was, but things changed dramatically. And along came the open enrollment periods, which most school districts went to. And pressure, I think, happened that. In the old days, the only way you can go to another school is if they had a curriculum that offered subjects different than what your high school did. So then you got to filled out your paperwork and got the transfer. But things changed. So along with regional growth, this had quite an impact. So let's start in reverse here a little bit and talk about how did that impact your program, Mike?
Open enrollment, since I've been at Del Campo, this will be my 15th year. We've went from 1,900 down to 1,500 and back up to 1,900 in enrollment, and now we're back down to about 16, 17. So I've seen it go up and not, and I do know for a fact that when we've had more people in school, we've had more athletes for sure. And we probably had a little better football team. But in our school district, it's not like the Elk Grove School District in that there's a lot of schools there that play really, really, really good football. And we play a lot of good sports in the San Juan district. Probably not like, obviously, when you coached at El Camino or when I played at Mira Loma. But in football, we really only have a couple teams left that play good football in the San Juan district. So for whatever reason, we haven't reaped the rewards of playing real better football in our district for whatever reason. But I think it's probably had a bigger impact maybe in some of the other school districts. But as far as our school, it hasn't had a real big effect. We probably get 2 to 4 transfers a year. They're coming from other schools, but they're normally not coming from another school in our district. They're usually just legitimately had moved into the area and they've gone to our school. So, you know, and we have 4 classes a day at Del Campo. So a lot of the kids that come in really like the block system, which is 4 classes a day versus 6 classes. So I could understand that. But as far as open enrollment, yeah, our enrollment's gone up and gone back down. So we're a Division III school right now in our league. We play in a Division I/II league, which we play whoever we play, but with our enrollment, we're probably a very legit Division III team right now.
Well, Mike Johnson, we've done a number of your games, and we know that area between Cosumnes and you is just growing like crazy. And I don't know who's bigger between the two of you, but you're getting on up there probably real close to one another. You probably were ahead of them in enrollment, but then they're kind of catching up a little, aren't they?
Well, it's a little different in our district. So while everyone has open enrollment, our district is an open enrollment district except for two schools, and that would be Franklin and Pleasant Grove, because we're at about 2,600, 2,700, so our enrollment's capped. So I have the benefit of only losing kids. We don't get transfers. You know, back in the old days of coaching, every summer you wait to see who, maybe a few new kids will roll in. There was a period where if you moved across the street from Franklin, you went to Laguna Creek. And that was literally across the street because we were impacted and we were enclosed. So needless to say, I am not a fan of open enrollment. Not more for this situation. I'm old school. I like community schools. I think open enrollment personally has created a free agency situation with young kids. And it's not the kids, it's the kids' parents. And we've all had the shoppers, and we've all had the dads and the agents in town shopping kids. I don't think it's healthy for our sport. I would like to draw a boundary around all of our schools and say, hey, let's just deal with this as our group of guys and let's coach them up. And then I don't have to worry about that kid I yelled at yesterday transferring to a different color in a week because I coached him however I coached him. So, not a fan.
Wow, I applaud that.
Yeah. Well, Casey, you're going from having everybody in Loomis, right? Go to your place, and now you're making the transfer. So how do you feel about all it?
Well, I think open enrollment at Del Oro, my 15 years there, the population of the school went from enrollment was pretty much 1,600 to 1,700. So it really wasn't a lot. There's a lot of great schools on that 80 corridor, and there wasn't a lot of good community schools everybody went to. Each school would have a couple influx every year, a few kids here and there, and we'd always get, everybody accused you of recruiting kids and all that stuff that we all get accused of. But I don't think there was a lot of enrollment issues up there that that I saw. I mean, opening now and leaving there and going to Capitol, obviously it's a different ball game for me, and one where if you bring me back in 15 years, I'll probably have a better answer for you. But I'm excited for my opportunity. Being in the public system for 25 years of coaching, and now having an opportunity to go to a school that has been predominantly a smaller private school that really wants to take the next step and compete with the Jesuits and Christian Brothers and make that step. And I'm excited for these next 3, 5, 10 years and see what we can take it. Obviously, open enrollment with that part of it, we'll be trying to get good kids on campus and trying to have a good experience overall for that. So we'll see how that goes. There are some negatives with the privates that it's not free either. So it's easy to say, kids just can't show up and play. There's some you have to pay to go there. There's some things that are in place to help in some of those things, but it's not just a free-for-all and a private thing that they're all coming and jumping on your football team. Capital Christian's a school that's been around 200 or 300, and there will probably be 500 in the fall, and they're kind of making that transition. And it'll be interesting to find out, going from 1,600 kids and playing in a league with 2,400 to having hopefully we have 30, 40 guys on the team, and not having a freshman team. So that's part of the challenge and part of the reason I'm there. But I think just having just going to a great place that I feel my energy's back up and going, and they want to grow and make it happen. And I guess I'm sure open enrollment will be a big part of that. But I don't really know how that's going to play a part in the first 4 months.
Well, we're going to talk about alignment later in terms of where you'll be in 2018, being that you and Mike will be in that same Division III in a pretty good league. TJ, how do you offer this?
We're just blessed because we're a block schedule too, so we're not capped, and so we get kids, and we have a data and technology program on our campus, and kids want to take that, and they'll come to our school for that specific reason. One of our top players over the years, Trey Nahas, was a data technology kid, and he specifically came to our school because he literally was doing prosthetic limbs. He already had that in his head, and he wanted to go to Cal Poly, so our school was fitting for him specifically for what we had for him. So that was kind of nice because you're talking to a kid who's 16 years old, and he's already telling you what he's going to do with his life, and he's all playing himself. So you're like, man, this is a different person, and so he did all that stuff. He got a scholarship lucky enough. It's hard to get athletic scholarships, but he got it where he wanted to go, and so that worked out for us. And I always said, as a parent of anything, it's like, I want to let you go where you want to go. If you want to go there, go. I don't really care less. If you want to come here, then come here. It's fine. And I never, because again, my experience is, being in the peninsula and the San Francisco Bay Area is like, there's WCL out there. Catholic schools very dominant and strong. So we would lose kids all the time in and out. So right when I started coaching and teaching, I just figured, to cut off the gray hairs, I care less. I just, hey, I'm not going to tell you where to go to school. Go to where you want. And we'd have kids leave and have kids come back. And have kids leave, come, and it just was, and they just kept moving. And coach the kids that are there, and then they keep moving. And sometimes, like you say, enrollment will go up, sometimes enrollment will go down, and enrollment up. And that's what happens when you have open enrollment. It could all be great for a while, and then it all could be bad. And so, because you're shopping, you're like you said, you're trying to, hey, look what we have type thing, and that's what open enrollment kind of is. And it's sad, but it's like. That's what they're doing. That's what they're deciding to do. You know what I mean?
I don't know what the enrollment right now is at Monterey Trail, but I have always been ultimately impressed with the success you have had with such diminutive roster size. And I know you're very selective, and you've hold high standards there, and it's just very impressive the way you draw a line that you know is fair and square, and you stick to it, and it builds so much character over there.
Yeah, we have high standards at our school, and the kids know that, and they're going to come out and participate. But our freshman or JV levels the numbers are getting bigger and bigger because our junior program is feeding kids. They're coming, so it's like that part of it's all kind of tumbling. So I've been there 13 years, so I think the community realizes I'm not going anywhere. I've been there so long. I love the school and the people in the community. So we had a parent meeting on Tuesday, and it was great. You could feel the love in the environment with just they know who you are, And I was from the Bay Area, so I wasn't from there. So it take time to build relationships, know people. So that's what's going on.
Well, you've worked wonders with numbers. I can tell you that, and I hope the numbers pick up. Right. Well, Joe.
I really think that this is an issue that really hinges on kind of where you started, Jim, which is the way that things used to be in high school football in terms of neighborhood leagues and neighborhood rivalries. I think we've really lost a lot of that. Not that we don't have any of it anymore, but I think it's different. Mike and I are products of the West Valley League and the Campbell School District in the San Jose area, and we really used to have, at least in the Bay Area, and to my understanding here as well, local leagues. Your league was the 7 schools that were around your school, and maybe in the same school district, maybe in the same towns or adjacent towns. And I really felt that in those days, kids, by and large, you stayed and you went to the school where you kind of lived and you grew up, and you played sports kind of all the way through with the same guys. And I don't know if that's better or worse, but I think that that's a big part of the reason for the change. Is I think that we, during the time that I've been coaching, again starting in the Bay Area and working my way up here, I think we've changed away from that to a large extent, and I think unfortunately we've lost a lot of those rivalries and maybe some of the positive things that went along with those rivalries as people have been, we talked about realignment, as people have been realigned into, because of enrollment or different things, situations where you're not playing the other schools that are local to you. And I think that that's unfortunate, because I think that's part of what's neat about high school sports. In the ability to play the kids that you grew up around and play against the kids that you grew up around. And I think that outside of our control as coaches, I think that we've lost some of that just as things have changed over time.
Thank you, Joe.
Can I add to that real quick?
Certainly.
Because I always wonder, because I've been in the game a long time, and I also wonder if the pressure of the state games and the championship system that we're currently running for us to produce high-level NorCal opponents for SoCal, if that hasn't had something to do with the opening and relaxing of open enrollment, to where we could start to create power programs, which we have. But without open enrollment, we might not have the power programs as Southern Cal does. So I don't know where the timeline of all this fits, but I see the relaxing of this. CIF even relaxed it more this past, a month ago, where they've opened up the gate where you can transfer for athletic reasons. It's opening and opening, and you know, and I'm with Joe. I'm old school, and I know Joe's old school too, and we're children of old school coaches. And I'm third generation, Joe's second generation football coaches. There's something very special about the Saturday Turkey Bowl game that I remember playing in, and that I'm sure we've all played in, to where everybody was there, everybody knew each other, and it was a rival. I mean, and because it was every single year. There's a lot of beauty to that too.
Point very well taken. Lots of credence placed on that, and I think you're entirely correct about that. So the ever-changing scope here of open enrollment. We're going to take another break, and when we come back, we're going to have our other two panelists join us and talk about CIF policy, bylaws, new rules, etc. Stay with us. Welcome back to Access Sacramento's Hometown Sports and our special presentation of looking back and moving forward 20 years of high school football in the Sacramento area. Now it's my pleasure to introduce the officials serving on our distinguished all-star panel. From the Northern California Officials Association, a 40-year varsity football official serving on every division level of the Sac Joaquin section, chairman of the football group, chairman of the classification committee, and football assigner for JSS, and the NCOA advisor, Mr. Larry Vaughn, to my right. And also from the Northern California Officials Association, with 29 years as a high school football official and a 3-year term as group leader, Mr. Brian Jacobs, to my left. And at this point in time, we're going to shift our topic to CIF policy, bylaws, new rules, and so on. And Coach Dimino, I know this is one of your favorite areas to stir the kettle.
Well, we see many games, as you well know, not just once a week, but we try to see beyond that and travel quite a bit. CIF policy and bylaws. Camp policy. As you look at their camp policies and practices, changes, hitting, thud, etc. Dead period. The dead periods change from 1 week to 2 weeks to 3 weeks. And then, of course, we have the on-field rule changes that I'm sure officials will bring into view and their interpretation. And we'd like everyone to gather in the discussion as I finish my introduction here. And so we just start out alone, camp policies. The restrictions were so great, pretty much camp business went out the door, right? The camp business is pretty much a foregone thing. And then hitting and thud, I hear coaches talking about that constantly. We can't put people on the ground. We could do this. We have a thud. We can't do, and they felt very, very limited, and particularly the effect early season, where they really ready. You can work out all summer in the weight room and conditioning, but if you don't hit and you never put people on the ground, all of a sudden here you are in 0 week and you're putting people on the ground, who has the advantage? Does the offense have the advantage, or those offensive backs haven't been hit during the week. So there's a lot going on. So to start our discussion on it, we're going to intermix, and I'm going to talk about, do you think the camp policy or the hitting has changed? And this time we'll start with Mike Johnson.
Well, it's definitely changed, and I'm a product of summer team camps at Franklin. I think we'd done them 8 to 9 years in a row. The bylaws and the guidelines were always you had to have 4 teams represented, minimum of 4 teams represented. We'd go for about 4 days, go against each other. I know at the camps we attended, we had referees there during all competitions. I thought the camps were great. I thought the camps were really good for the younger kids too, especially 8th graders coming up playing football for the first time. It gave them 4 days to put their girdle on backwards, just to learn how to do everything, because we're all very competitive people as coaches, and now we don't have that. And so you're telling me that you have these freshman programs, and you're like, you're going to play in 3 weeks, guys, and you have to have your special teams in, your offense in, and your defense. They don't allow for a lot of time for technique and just teaching some basic skills. So I miss that as a coach. I'm that great athlete. You go, this kid's going to be a stud. But the second that helmet came on and he wilted when we hit, we don't know that. The first time we figure that out, it's probably about week 2 or 3, and we're in our scrimmage. And I think it's made it a little tougher.
All right, TJ, what impact is it that you feel, camps, no camps, and the hitting, et cetera?
Piggyback on what he's saying, the quality of preparation has definitely went down. Evaluation has went down for players, helping them with their process of where they start, where they finish, and that's been a big, I think, impact on teams being ready early. The week 0 games, and you have to play early and get your teams prepared. Like you said about new players being evaluated, being able to see if players. You can kind of set your teams up and know who's playing where from that week you got to kind of watch the kids go through the process. And at the end of the day, for us, we always used bags and slowed things down and taught, and that never was an issue for us because we already did that. So when the state came down and said, this is what we do, we were already doing that. Years before, 99, we were doing that. Because we already thought of the rugby idea. We already knew that's how you tackle and that's how it works. So with the camp and contact, we were already kind of bought into that.
I'm going to switch over to the official side. Brian, have you seen much change since some of these new rules came into play?
Oh, absolutely. And I want to piggyback on what Coach Johnson said. Camps are just as invaluable for officials, because just as players need reps to get good, officials need reps to get good. They need to look at plays and see plays from the field, and camps are invaluable for new officials and even veteran officials to start getting ready for the season. And as the camps have gone away, we've noticed the difference. We really wish that there were more camps and more chances for officials to get reps so that they could be more ready when the season starts.
What about you, Larry? I see you constantly evaluating officials and so forth. What do you think?
I'll let to piggyback with Brian also. Officials need those reps, and we try to get the seasoned officials back in so that they'll get ready for the game to come, and our rookies so they won't have the butterflies, even though it doesn't help, but they still have the butterflies. But we try to we'd like to get them in there early so that they could see the plays develop and then know what they're doing, instead of waiting till actual game time. And that's why you see an awful lot of nervous new guys out there now, because they haven't had that they used to get a long time ago. Like when I came in, it was fine. It was great. That's with a long time ago though. But the new guys need that repetition.
Yeah. Casey?
Yeah, I was a camp guy also. I think another thing that I think we're losing track of is we were able to get all our gear out to all the kids in our program and learn how to put it on. But then if you had a kid on your program where you had too big of a helmet or smaller helmet, you had time to adjust to get the equipment right by the time you started when it went. And I think there was also a good process of evaluation, I know, especially from the JVs to the varsity, of that guy coming into his first varsity experience of really have a chance to evaluate with gear on. So I think that's really hurt on that end. But with the concussions being a big deal and things like that, we've had to adapt. And like TJ, we kind of we're doing that before. I think it's helped our kids with the safety. CIF met with us last year and put in where we could have bags now in the spring, and they're kind of listening to us as coaches. At least we got bags out there. So I think it just challenged all of us to find different ways of tackling. We got to tackle bags now, or these loops, or these special gadgets you get at the clinics we go to. But I think it's just a good thing. I think it's a safety thing. I think it's a way for us to try to keep our kids more healthier and safer. And if we can make the game safer and get more kids out, I think we have a better chance of keeping our game going in the right direction. So.
Joe?
Sure, and I'm probably the only guy here who wasn't ever a team camp guy. But my perspective is that that's something that we as coaches should get to decide that for our own ball clubs. I don't think that that's something that should be decided for us. I think for the guys who want to go to team camps, I think they should be able to go to camps. To me, it's almost akin to legislating we're all going to run the same offense, right? I think you're taking away some of the initiative and sort of the ability for us as coaches to structure our programs by telling everybody you can't go to a team camp and do something that you feel like is beneficial for your kids. And I think too, as that change has come in for us, I think it's a challenge for a lot of the guys who really believe in the team camps and for all of us, because they've also really pushed us into starting playing ball games earlier and earlier. And one of the things that I'd like to see sort of related to that is a little more flexibility and a little more ability to be practicing in pads longer from whatever it is that we start in the fall prior to actual competition. I think that there's, I speak for myself, but I think for most of us, we feel rushed. You feel very rushed getting a football team ready to play a ball game, not only proficiently but safely in the time frame that we have going into seasons.
Well, we'll go to one more, Mike, and we're going to hear from the officials on some of the changes and the rule changes and your interpretations, and I'm sure these coaches want to hear that. All right, Mike, what's your views on?
We like going to camp, and you had 4 days. You had 2 practices a day, and that's 4 hours a day that you can work on fundamentals and technique. You don't have to feel rushed, and you can teach them how to do it properly. And I think that it's also a lot of, from a different perspective, I thought that the kids bonded. I thought it was great for them to get away from home. I thought it was great to be away from their families. I thought it was great to rely on their fellow teammates and become a family member with them. I also thought it was great for our coaching staff. It was great for our coaching staff sometimes when you have new guys on your coaching staff, is to get all on the same page, not feel rushed, get on the whiteboard, watch film. And again, coaches bonding too, I think is important, because like the coaches mentioned earlier, you don't see a lot of 20-year-old coaches coming out of college that want to be a head coach anymore. They want to be a varsity coordinator, or they want to be a varsity coach. And being in my 50s, and it's scary, because I have one coach out of my 21 coaches this season that wants to be someday a head coach. 20 years ago, you probably had 15 that wanted to be a head coach someday. So yeah, if we're thinking safety, then I think that maybe they should listen to some of the older coaches that have been around, because if you want to go to camp, if that's for you, we are going to teach better fundamental and technique, which the kids aren't going to get hurt, and we are going to have a safer product on the field. Yeah. If we're really concerned about concussions, this is gives you 8 hours of extra practice to not tackle with the head or lead with the head and follow the rules. So we used to go to Nevada Reno, and we used to go to Yuba College, and our coach went to Nevada Reno too. When we went there, they had referees there from the NCAA, and they all reffed our games. So they got their reps, we got our reps. So I don't know if they can still do that unless they go out of state, because we're California, it's not going to happen. So again, from a team, from a coaching standpoint, from safety standpoint, fundamental and technique for 8 extra hours, at least for a few days, I think football's safer with football camps, and we should be trusted.
TJ.
It just really felt, when it went down and the rules changed, it felt exactly like how California specifically in our state dropped football in all those universities. It was the same feeling of knee-jerk reaction of what was going on that was not immediate. This has been a lot of years, that, kids would be getting hurt, or, we're talking about the game. And so it's like, that was kind of a knee-jerk reaction of, let's get rid of the camps, without thinking about it first and maybe talking to the coaches, see how they feel about it. We're just going to get rid of this, and then now you guys deal with it. And I just think they lost a lot. Like you said, there's a lot of things off that knee-jerk reaction, as well as all the college teams that lost those football teams that gave scholarships to those young men that were going to universities just because they thought they could play football, and they would get degrees at all the universities from Division II up. You know what I mean? They dropped football in our state.
Yeah, and I want to turn to the officials, but I just want to piggyback on Joe's statement again. Why not give the coaches that prerogative and not take that decision away from them, where the coach is going to want to go to camp, fine. If he doesn't want to go to camp, fine. And seems to me that it's benefiting the kids, your coaching staff, as well as the officials. So let's talk a little bit out on the on-field changes, et cetera, that are coming around. Brian?
Well, the last few years, as you know, there's been a lot of rule changes and rule emphases on safety, player safety. Coach Taylor alluded to this. If we don't make the game as safe as it can be, we're not going to have the game. Football is a violent collision sport. That's what it is. But there are ways to make it as safe as it can be so that every player has an equal opportunity to show their skills. And mainly, I think what the rules have been in the last few years, the rule changes have aimed toward taking the head out of the game. We don't want players to use their head as a weapon, and we don't want players to have their heads become targets. And this year there are a number of rule changes. A lot of them, there's changes that have to do with colors of jerseys and things like that. But the ones that really affect the on-field game, there's only really a couple. One of them is that high school is unique in that there's a pass interference that can be called that's face guarding. And face guarding is really the only kind of pass interference you can have where there's no contact. If I'm guarding the face of the receiver, that can be called, that's been eliminated. So that will no longer be part of the pass interference definition. So now we're in alignment with all the other levels. Also, there's a new definition of something called a pop-up kick, which is a kick that's put on the tee and then driven straight down into the ground and then up in the air. That's been eliminated. That's now a foul to do that, and that's in the interest of player safety. I'd say that the vast majority of rules in the last 3 or 4 years have been player safety. They've introduced terms like targeting and defenseless player, and a lot of the plays and a lot of the hits that all of us made when we played, that we got congratulated for, they're illegal now. There's a good way to do that, and now there's an illegal way to do it. And coaches will have to teach their players it's going to have to change. One other rule change that's kind of going to affect the game, it sounds kind of obscure, but now if there's a penalty, the offended coach, the coach who gets to make the choice of what they want to do with the penalty, can determine when the clock starts after that. That sounds kind of esoteric, but I can give you a really easy example of that. I had a game a couple years ago where at the end of the game, the team winning by 8 had a 4th and 2. Ran a play, got the first down, the player was tackled in bounds, but there was a foul on the offense. We had less than a minute to go. By rule, that clock had to run. So that offense got to run 25 more seconds off that clock. The new rule says that offended coach can say, no, I want it to start on the snap, saving them 25 seconds. So that's really where that comes into play in a situation like that. So they've given that option to the coaches now. So other than that, they're really just cosmetic changes for this year. But you can just see a pattern of continued attempts to make the game as safe as it can be so that we have this game.
Well, Larry, beside safety of the game, and that's what we're all after, better equipment, safety of the game, et cetera, we see a lot of games, like I said, and we do a lot of games, and I'm always concerned, particularly old school, and I know you guys are. You don't have to. You all have a bit of old school in you. The fact of the matter is, conduct of players on and off the field, and I know you got enough to do to, run the football game, and I know sometimes I hear officials saying, we need more cooperation from coaches in terms of their bench decorum. discipline on their bench. And many of the head coaches have one or two coaches assigned to conduct on that bench. You know, I see things happening there on the sidelines, and officials have to come over and give them warnings and so forth. What's your feeling about that, Larry?
We need more help. The officials need more help from the coaches, because I'm telling you, the flank officials have a tough job to do, and when they have coaches in their ears and not really, I think the coaches lose perspective of the game. Some of them, the call didn't go their way, and they spend too much time bickering about that call instead of coaching their team so that they can get back into the game. Okay, and it takes a lot from that official too, especially in our organization where our officials are very young on the sidelines. That's where we train them. We want them to get thick skin, okay? And sometimes the game may be too big for them, but you know what? Scar tissue is good. You know, I got a lot of scar tissue when I was little, when I was small, my first years, and it made me kind of to know when to say enough is enough and to go on and do my job, and don't let my ears ruin the game, okay? Because sometimes, you have officials over there that'll have rabbit ears, and you have a coach over there that's got a runny mouth, or he's really antagonizing him. Instead of the official handling it in a professional way, he'll throw a flag. And we try to teach these guys how to handle the sidelines. And hopefully the coaches, if we can count on you head coaches, that a lot of times they have the head coach. It's usually one of your assistants. And teach them that, all calls may not go the way you think you may go. But the official most definitely doesn't want to make a bad call.
Well, from an advisory standpoint, what's the actual process where you indoctrinate or bring even your veteran officials up to speed in terms of new rules that Brian just mentioned, or refining their practice on the field with regard to problematic areas or areas in officiating that could be more diplomatic?
We don't get hardly any, except for in scrimmages and our training during the off season, where we go out to schools and we get in there but then it's more of an instruction, okay? Coaches are out on the football field, which is not game-like. Officials are over there, and they'll take a lot from, because they're doing a lot of teaching. I try to when I'm out there, I try to teach the kids, teach the young officials, hey, throw the flag and talk to the coach. You may not throw the penalty, you may not march it off, but throw the flag so you'll get used to throwing the flag, and you don't take so much of the guff from the coaches. That's my way of thinking, But the veterans that we have that go out there, some of those veterans we have trouble with. I'll tell you like it is, we have trouble with some of our veterans because they feel like they've been around long enough to where they don't have to take that stuff. But as long as I've been around, I know when to say when, and I will take a lot as long as you don't get personal, okay? But when I've had enough, I will tell you so. But I'll never do it face to face. I will be, I'll back up to the sideline and I'll be talking to you, but I won't turn around and tell the whole world that I'm talking to you guys, okay? Yeah. That's the way we try to teach the young officials coming up, and some of the veterans. But some of the veterans, it's a little bit harder. But the new guys are real easy.
I'm going to ask one thing from a spectator viewpoint, since I'm no longer in coaching. But my rule when I coach was simple, and I know you guys use it. Is I would coach my players and how to handle officials and how to talk to officials and approach officials, and simply tell my assistants, the coaches coach, players play, officials officiate. And that's what I've demanded of my teams. and then try to teach my players and or captains how to approach an official. And that's, I hope more of that is done today, and maybe it is. But in the old days, when the officials were going, before technology, way back, when they were going to Hiram Johnson, way back, you remember those days, because I did some officiating as well, and they'd be there weekly, and they broke up into groups. Remember at the at Hiram Johnson Theater, broke up into groups and had their teaching sessions, etc. And actually, I thought it was pretty good. Now, I realized at the time we didn't have 5 officials at the football games, or we don't have as many high schools did at that time as now. But
sure.
I thought the teaching at that time was pretty good.
Yeah, well, now teaching is still pretty good, but we have a lot of satellites. But it's still, teaching is pretty good, and I can't say enough about the instructions that the NCOA gives the officials. Even though right now I'm not physically on the field anymore, but I am really proud to have served for 40 years with the NCOA, and because I'm benefiting from all the training that they give me, and a lot of the officials I hope have benefited from the training that I've passed on to them. And it's true that coaches coach, players play, and officials officiate. And if we get that little communication and get all together, and most of the time I can say for sure from my personal point of view, is that there's far less players that gives officials trouble than coaches. I mean, coaches give us more of a problem than the kids. The kids are very polite, most of them. They're very, they come up and, you get the occasional kid to come up and yell at you, but that's few and far between them.
To give you an idea, Will, 20 years ago we had maybe 40 or 50 schools that played high school football. Now there's 85 or more.
Yeah, more.
In our officials group, that group that met at Johnson, we had 100, 120 officials. Now we don't have enough when we have 250.
Wow.
So over the 20-year period we're talking about here, it's basically doubled from an official's point of view for the coverage, and we've gone from 4 officials on a varsity game to 5. So we need the numbers, and it's very hard to get those numbers. I wanted to say that the vast majority of coaches and the vast majority of kids are wonderful.
Right.
And as I mentioned before, football is an emotional game. There's going to be moments in a game where the coach may not be absolutely thrilled, the official may not be absolutely thrilled, whatever the situation is, but it has always worked out. It just seems like it's always worked out. It's very rare. I don't believe I've ever disqualified a coach in my 30 years. I think it's a conversation you have in a game. I think it's a conversation that has to occur during a game between the officials and the coaches. And I think as long as that conversation occurs, the kids see it, the assistants see it, the fans see it, and I think it makes the game go well, because really coaches and officials are partners. It looks like we're adversaries when you see it from the stands as a fan, because it looks like we're always jawing at each other, but most of the stuff isn't in anger or in conflict. Most of it's just information and communication.
Thank you, Brian. Well, we're going to take another break right now. When we come back, we'll re-engage what was mentioned a bit earlier about safety and precautionary measures on the football field. We'll be right back.
There's a quiet battle happening on our streets. Pedestrians are acting indestructible. And drivers act like they own the road. They're both wrong. Be aware, be alert. Pedestrians don't have armor. A message from the California Office of Traffic Safety.
Everywhere that we go, he makes people laugh and makes people smile, and I feel like I have that quality.
He's the one who always takes me fishing. I watch golf with him. And
I watch him cook, because when I grow up, I want to be a cook too.
We have the same faces like this.
Dad is the one, when you fall, that picks you up.
That unconditional sense of presence and reassurance is really what makes him my father.
Welcome back to Access Sacramento's Hometown Sports and our special presentation of looking back and moving forward. 20 years of high school football in the Sacramento area. We know that safety and precautionary measures are always a grave concern, particularly with the advancement of physical play and athletes being in greater condition than ever before. And we're going to show you a film clip now that should be quite revealing in terms of new technology that has crossed ground never before having been discussed. And it's all about new technology and the helmets and what can be done to prevent or detect possible concussions in advance. Let's take a look.
I'm here on the storied Cordova High School football field with Coach Darren Nill of the Lancers, head football coach, and we're going to talk about safety issues for a moment with respect to the players, not necessarily the coaches, but the players. Coach, you have an interesting helmet there. Tell me a little bit about that.
Hi, Rick. Yeah, and thanks for coming out. So these are our new Rydell helmets. They're called Speed Flex, which is their top of the line. And other than really looking nice, which is what the players like, the players also think it feels good. It's a lighter weight helmet, so it doesn't feel like a bowling ball on the top of your head. But the real neat technology is a membrane that fits inside. You can't see it because it's between the black cushion and the hard plastic. But there's a membrane in there that runs the course of the helmet, and it measures G-force impacts. And once we get an impact that measures over a certain percentage per position, which is set at a level of 1% of all the highest impacts, then there's an alert that goes off. And this monitor is worn by the trainer and the coaching staff, and it just vibrates and it lets the coaches know what player. It'll give his number, and we'll call the player over and give him the concussion protocol, check him out, make sure he's physically good to go. If he is good, we send him back in. If we suspect anything, we will not send him back in. We'll make sure that he goes to a doctor. It's also an added benefit that it not only records 1% of a single impact, but it'll keep larger impacts of 5% over the course of a week. So at the end of the week, they fall off. But that'll let you know if a player is receiving a lot of big impacts, and maybe we can watch him and find out why. Is he doing something wrong? Is the technique not right? Is he just, dumb luck and gets involved in some big impacts? So, and then the last benefit is it takes roll for us, because with the monitor, I never have to take roll call. The monitor does it for us.
Are different players who play different positions likely to have a different level of warning?
Absolutely. So a lineman impact level is different than a running back impact level, etc. So every position has an impact level. So not only do we key in the players' names into the computer system, but their position too.
So I'm wearing the helmet, and regardless of what position I'm playing, there's a warning that triggers because I got a hit that may be serious. What happens next?
So it doesn't mean it's concussion. The helmets cannot record concussions. It just says, hey guys, that was a big hit. Let's take a look at that player. So we'll pull that player off, whether it be at practice or during a game, and we just make sure we check them over. We ask them some questions. We look into their eyes. We give them a moment to make sure things settle out. We don't accept, I'm okay, coach. They are checked out before they go back in and play. And if they check out, they'll go back in. If they do not, or we suspect that it's close, anything that's borderline, we do not put them back in.
So it's not only just the basic protocol, but it's also the machinery in recognition of what other players have had happen.
Yeah, there's years and years and years and years of data. And part of the biggest problems with concussion is the repeat hits. So a player, I'm okay, coach. Let me play, coach. I'm ready to go, coach. We hear it all the time. Usually not in practice, but it's at the game level. And we just don't trust their opinions anymore. We want their opinions when we put them through the concussion protocol, but we also check out other physical things like eye movement, etc.
Do you have a medical trained personnel on the sideline who helps evaluate, or is it just strictly the computer, the technology that evaluates?
Yeah, so the computer will alert the trainer and the coaches, because at any one time we have 100 kids out on this practice field and we don't have eyes on all of them all the time. So the computer system, the insight system will say, hey guys, you might want to check number 61, 37 or what out or whatever, and then we'll go over, pull him out and have the trainer talk to him.
Now this will be the second year you'll be using the system, correct?
It is. Last year was the very first year. Bought the system through the help of the city of Rancho Cordova.
Have you noticed from last year's input, and I know it's a one-year sample, so it's very small, but what have you noticed as far as the numbers of concussions, if there have been, and how serious they might have been?
Yeah, part of the program that the city of Rancho Cordova does with their community enhancement funds is we have to give them back data. For every year that they give us money, we got to give them data back. And I was even surprised. Our concussions were down 47% over the previous year when we did not have this helmet in this system. What does that mean? I don't know. The sample size is only 1 year. These studies usually last 10 and 20 years. But I do know that we had some really good results using this equipment and using the system.
And again, I would stress those are suspected concussions.
Correct. Those when we pulled a player out and said, you better go get checked out. Sometimes they came back and said they weren't concussed. They just had a big hit, but our tests show that they're not concussed. Other times we did have a few concussions on the JV level, but last year we did not have one certified, verified doctor concussion on the varsity level.
Well, that's outstanding. And now you're one of the few schools, to my knowledge, that's using this system. Is it just because the system's cost?
Yeah, it's an expensive system. There are other schools that use them, just not to the extent that we use them. We're able to outfit every single player in our program. JV, all the way up through varsity, every single player has these helmets. And that is cost prohibitive to a lot of schools that are out there.
Well, I would like to say thank you, Coach, for taking some time to help us understand the system and the benefits there.
I'm always willing to talk about it. I love it.
Thanks, Coach. Here at the Cordova High football field with head coach Darren Nill, I'm Rick Stewart for Access Sacramento.
Well, gentlemen, we know that injuries are always a tragic thing, and certainly with the awareness now of the concussion problem, epidemic, so to speak, being widespread, what now is being done in terms of individual camps as far as preventative measures, new equipment, anything that relates directly to precaution and trying to minimize any type of injury on the football field?
I know for us, speaking for us, we were fortunate to start some baseline testing probably about 8 years ago, 10 years ago. We were the first to do it at Del Oro, and basically gives the kids a predetermined where they are normal, and if they get concussed, they go take the thing and kind of see where they're at so they get cleared. So I think a lot of those things they've been putting in place have really helped us. I think when it first came out, for me, I was a little weary of, I don't know, I'm not a doctor, I don't want to do this, but I think it's really turned out to be a real blessing for me because it's all taken care of and I don't have to make those tough decisions. So I think that's one thing that's really helped with it. I think we're all a lot more aware of it, so I get back to the tackling practices and things like that. And we try to strengthen our neck and do some things that are always coming out and trying to look at data and things we can kind of do to help. But I would say in our program that was probably one of the bigger safety things we've had over the last few years.
Thank you.
And then just the concussion protocol and the information out about the concussions and everything from first aid and concussion. I mean, we have so many different certifications and things that we have to go through as coaches and teachers that we're definitely prepared. I mean, I really don't have to read the information. I can pretty much answer the questions because I've been so many years with the same information over and over again. And also in our own district, I think the biggest thing for us is having the athletic trainer full-time on our staff and campus now, and that keeps it away from you in terms of them being able to do the concussion protocol or any injury prevention, whatever. They can go through the process and the steps, and so we just immediately they're taking care of that for us when the kid has a hurt or injury, and they take care of that. So that's been a big blessing for us.
I think one of the things that sometimes, as we look at this issue, and I think we've made a lot of obviously positive changes in the way that we coach and the way that we structure the things that we do and the way that we try to equip our players. But I do think one of the things that sometimes in the general public maybe is lost sight of a little bit is the pretty significant difference between professional football and the nature of the contact that takes place and sort of some of the impact and the effects on people who are participating in that versus football at our level. And that's not to minimize, obviously, the contact nature of our sport at our level. But I think oftentimes the general public at large gets this idea from watching the NFL that that's what a high school football game looks like. And we're playing the same sport, but all of us here and those of us obviously who have seen and been involved in both know that it's really pretty significantly different, in my opinion, in terms of the way that contact looks in an NFL game versus how it looks in a high school game.
Thank you, Joe.
Sure.
I think the education, especially through the internet now, I mean, back in the old days of coaching, we were all first aid, CPR certified. I mean, it was like every year, and things would change. First aid, CPR. Well, I've been doing this for 23, 25 years. I just recertified on my concussion protocol and my cardiac protocol just 2 weeks ago, because it is now added in there. As I think for our district, it's every 2 or 3 years. You have to, not only is it first aid and CPR, but we always go through our concussion, and now cardiac's been added last year. So we're aware of those events also. So I just think as coaches, we're better educated now. And it is also great to have a trainer.
Oh, yeah.
Because in the old days, we all had our loopy kids that were born loopy. And we're trying to figure out, like, I don't know if he's concussed or that he's just loopy. And for me, it's really nice to just pass him to a trainer who has no idea what he's like. And I don't think anybody fights our trainers. I mean, they're good at what they do. And that's helped a lot in our district.
We have the same thing with our district with the concussion protocol every 2 years. And we're fortunate to have a doctor on our sideline at every game, and he's been with us for about 15 years, and he's very up to speed on that. And then we went to last year the helmet bonnets that strap on that had padded. A lot of the NCAA or college teams, and I've seen some of the NFL teams using them too. So they have been very helpful, and I think it also cuts down the wear and tear, I think, on the helmets, in my opinion. So I thought that was a big change in our program last year.
From an officiating standpoint, in an instance, hypothetically, where you might have a coach getting your attention and saying, hey, the opposition out here is doing some illegal cut blocking or doing something that's contrary to the rules and could cause injury or so forth. Is that something that you do pay immediate attention to and observe that and assert yourself if necessary?
Well, we try to, as far as being an official, we try to pay attention to that all the time. And a coach bringing it to our attention, if we didn't see it, we acknowledge. But most of the time we have 5 officials out in the football field, and we see a marginal block or if it's truly a cut block, or he's got a flag, but it's a marginal, then we have no problem telling the coach it was marginal, or it wasn't a cut block, or it wasn't a kickback block. The one that I personally had a problem with was a concussion, because trust me, I'm not a doctor, but I get paid to make that decision when a player gets hit, and I found it hard for me, and because I'm not. But once an official makes that decision, nobody on your sideline can send the player back in, not even if you have a doctor over there. And that's why I found it hard for me to make that decision. But we do talk to coaches, and we listen to, as long as they're talking to us and not at us.
I love the idea of a coach telling us that there's something like that going on, because especially if, their defensive lineman there is doing this, or their offensive guard or whatever is doing it, I tend to want to go right up to that young man and say, this is what the coach says you're doing, and you know what, I'm going to watch and see if it's true or not. I don't believe it, but I'm going to watch and see if it's true. You know, and so it gives him a little, and he knows we're going to be watching for a couple plays. And you know what? I don't know that I've ever seen them do whatever it was they were accused of doing. So either they did it and got found out and stopped, or the coach just thought it was, or caught a tail end of it, or whatever it happened to be.
I want to jump back to the cut blocking. I think there's the controls. I see the officials enforce the cutback, the cutting on O. I'm seeing more and more defensive cutting. Okay, and you know, you're going to hurt people just the same way. And the book says you don't cut. It doesn't say offensive people don't cut. Defensive can cut, right?
That does not say that.
Okay, that's what I like to see enforced. And quite honestly, I felt this is no reflection on any one officials. I saw more of it toward the latter part of the year that was called on one side a little more than others. I know you don't teach that, but if it's there, enforce it.
It gets a little tougher for the defense because they have more latitude when they're going to the ball carrier. They can do a lot of things going to the ball carrier or a loose ball than an offensive player will ever have. Things that look illegal, if an offensive player did it, it'd be illegal. It's not illegal for a defensive player if they're going for the ball carrier or the ball. It makes it very tough, and it makes it a little harder to call. But I agree with you that it's probably something that should be looked at closer and called more often.
Thank you, Brian. We're going to take another quick break and come back with perhaps our final topic, one that the Imperator always likes to talk about, something that will impact all of us next year and for the next 4 years, starting in 2018. That would be league realignment. We'll be right back.
They said I couldn't dream. Called me a piece of trash and swore that's all I'd ever be. Said a bottle couldn't see the ocean. Give up. Go back to the dumpster. But I didn't listen. I made my way. And now, I am what I've always wanted to be.
Welcome back to Access Sacramento's Hometown Sports and our special presentation of looking back and moving forward 20 years of high school football in the Sacramento area. Something that's not immediate for this season, but will be forthcoming beginning in 2018 and have a 4-year duration. And that would be the upcoming league alignment. And I know Jim Dimino has a few things he wants to throw out there to you gentlemen, our great array of coaches and officials here. And there's a few focal points there for you, Jim.
Well, yeah, I don't want to jump the gun. We've been talking about current conditions and everything. And as you know, 2018, you'll be going into new enrollments. Some of your new leagues, probably one of the greatest changes that I've seen in quite a while. I kind of want to sum it up a little bit. Having been on those alignment committees way back in the 80s, we had a different set of structuring this, not only scheduling and travel conditions, creations of new divisions, enrollment, etc. But there was one very important item, and sometimes we as football coaches may not think of it entirely, but considering all of sports on a school level, levels of competition. You know, as you know, many schools have all levels of competition, 3 volleyball teams, 3 softball teams, or 2 softball teams, et cetera, levels of competition. Some schools only have a frosh soft football team. So when you go to scheduling, that presents some problems at times. And to me, from the old school thought, was not just enrollment, levels of competition. It seems that in some ways that's gone by the wayside, where they're not worried about, the current ones are not worried about. It seems like a lot of this edges on, obviously, even though other sports may not want to hear it, the football power governs it, doesn't it? Pretty much. The football powers as well as enrollment. Basketball as well. But some of the other sports, they might care how many soccer championships they win, how many swimming championships they win, et cetera. That's not, you know, they're not worried about it. But, you know, my concern is that 0 week, I thought gave you more flexibility. I'm hearing tonight that sometimes it doesn't. You know, you have 10 games to fit in 11 weeks. I thought originally that plan would help schools. And I've heard a little bit tonight that's not necessarily true. I also heard that, you know, the days of our days when we signed 2-year contracts and they were honored and in writing and we can pull them out and they were honored, and then instead of somebody pulling out on you and saying no. I see more 1-year type assignments, and I can understand it because with your schedule and looking ahead, you may only agree to a 1 year because you have somebody in mind to go to and you've pretty much told them, hey, I think we can get together when I'm out of this. So, I mean, we could probably spend forever talking scheduling, and I had an interesting example that in 1987 I had been chasing De La Salle for about 4 years, and their athletic director Lafferty and I had been on the phone. And when I had my teams in my section back-to-back 80-45 teams, I felt we could play with them. And I wanted to play somebody outside the section who was a powerhouse. So we chased them. In 1987, in the spring, early spring, they called me and said, we got room for you, Coach. I'm going, they got room for us. Man, I lost a lot of guys. And I'm thinking, I've been waiting and waiting to play De La Salle, and now am I going to back out? Well, anyhow, we scheduled and they beat us. We had them down at the half, and it was a great experience for our kids, and we treated them like college kids. We brought them down the day before, et cetera. So that was a lesson learned, and it was good for us. And our kids also got to learn to play at that next level. And we ended up with a pretty good season, but like I said, we had played Nevada Union, Christian Brothers, and De La Salle for our non-league. And every one of them were powerhouses. So when our team went 7-3, we did go to the playoffs. You know, we did well in the league. It was the scheduling. So now scheduling. And I know I hear coaches saying we got to be careful because if we don't get X amount of wins, we're not getting the playoffs. So we can talk about this forever on levels. So just kind of sum it up, how you feel with scheduling today and the amount of teams getting in playoffs. We'll start with you, Mike. Scheduling.
Well, we go way back with this. Every sport's different. You know, and with football, it's true. It's that football's about wins. There's no power ranking. So it doesn't matter if I go up and play Casey at Del Oro and I lose. But, you know, we took a chance and played a real high-level team. For me, it's a loss, and for him, it's a win. And that's different in basketball. That's different in volleyball because it's either going off Max Prep's ratings. We're straight wins and losses. The problem with that is when you have the power, how hard has it been at Del Oro to schedule games? I mean, you're leaving the state. You're definitely leaving Sacramento all the time. And once your program rises to a level, and we've all had the benefit of having good teams, it's almost impossible to find games because people won't. There's no benefit to play the real good teams. What happens, the good teams play the good teams. So you're seeing these huge battles in preseason. And the problem with that is when Casey's at Del Oro, he's going to the Sierra Foothill League. So he's already battled for 3 weeks, and he's going right back into battles. In the Delta League, for us, It's the same thing in your league. It's the same exact thing. So you're going in there and you're getting beat up week 1, 2, and 3, and you take a breath, and before you know it, you're opening with Grant High School. You know, and you're like, so scheduling's tough, but scheduling's tough for all of us because the way the section has decided to do playoffs, and it's 100% based off wins and losses. And if TJ gets 6 wins next year, you know what? TJ's going to playoffs. 5 wins, not real sure about that. I mean, we kind of know the way it happens.
I see it on a little different level. It is about wins a little bit. Yes and no, there's a way to get in that way. But you also get automatic berths with your leagues. So like in ours, we got 3 or 4 teams that got in. So I felt like if my team can't take 3rd place in the league, I really don't feel we should go to the playoffs anyway. I wanted to schedule, it was hard scheduling teams, but I wanted to play the best teams around to really see where we're at. I really feel we can we get exposed and see what we're really good at and what we're not good at and where we got to improve. But I also think adverse times is where I feel like we can make real deep things with our team. We can really find the best version of our team, and I think we did a couple years back, being 4-6 and be able to get into the playoffs and make a run was a lot of that, learning more through the game of football than anything else. So I like scheduling the best. I like to play the best. I'm not real caught up in wins and losses. I'm caught up in trying to get my team produced as best they can to get in the playoffs. And when we get in the playoffs, we're going to be ready to go to make a run and win a section title. That's kind of what our mantra's been at. Some of the scheduling also is really tough with, like I said, having the 0 week. It does help having some stuff, but a lot of us have to have 5 home games and this and that for money. A lot of people don't understand. A lot of the sports are surprised by our gate. Share a stadium,
which makes it really difficult.
A lot of that. So there's a lot of stuff in with that, and then a lot of us with the new realignment are in odd number leagues. So you don't know when your bye is going to be. So like at Del Oro, we've had a week 8 and 9 bye. Well, De La Salle had a week 8 opening. That's about the only one that had one. I guess we're going down to De La Salle. You know, there's stuff. It's hard to find that. Just at my short term so far at Capitol, this week at West Campus dropped their football program. So you've got everything in place, and then week 5 you need a game. So it's hard finding games, and when you're talking to people from Kentucky and Idaho, and try to find a game week 5 during your league, it's really tough. So I think those are the hard part of scheduling. But I think I mean, overall, I like that we have the freedom, and I know at my school I'm able to work my schedule, and I'm not told where to go. So a lot of those 1-year deals kind of have to set up because you don't know. Next year, I know we're in an odd number league, so we don't know where our bye is going to be. So you really can't get too dialed into too many 2-year commitments to see where you're at. So that kind of makes it a little tough.
Yeah. I know you have enough to do with the upcoming season to do as head coaches, and you don't necessarily want to think ahead to this next 2018, but once again in your mind that scheduling thing, and you're either going to a different league, you're going to an odd number, and so in your mind you want to prepare. You got enough to do, and if you're both the AD and head coach, perhaps there's time to do it. And if you've got ADs that are active and pretty much, and you guys have really are elite coaches, and hopefully at this time in your career, even if you're not AD, you certainly have an administration and an AD that's going to get what you want. And if you give them, this is my plan A, plan B, plan C, and I wish you could work on it, and this is the direction we're going to go in lieu of where we're going. Okay? Want to wrap it?
Well, we're going to take another break, come back, and finish things up with some final comments and maybe an additional point of view from each of our coaches and officials. Stay with us. Welcome back to Access Sacramento's Hometown Sports. This is our special presentation of looking back and moving forward, 20 years of high school football in the Sacramento area. And I thought I might wrap this up with one more quick topic of discussion, and that would be the impact, as how you perceive it, the impact of television coverage on high school football as it relates to the teams, the coaches, the players, parents, and the officials. And open for pros and cons on such impact. Anybody free to lead off?
I think it's just, I think what you guys do in the program that you guys run allows such a great opportunity for our schools and our communities, for kids. The kids are always the time in the season that we're on television. Every place I've been here, the kids are talking about it. Their parents in the community are talking about it. I know for myself, my kids for a while weren't really necessarily old enough to go to the ball games, and so that was sometimes the one time they got to watch the ball game was when we were on Access Sacramento on television. And so I think it's just been a blessing for us in all facets, having the opportunity to kind of get to be big time, right, and see ourselves and see our colleagues and other schools as well on the television. It's been awesome. Of course.
Yeah, it gave a great avenue to scout teams too, you know. You got to see them on TV, close shots. But no, everything that's happened here with all the media outlets, including you guys, it's just been a great thing for the student athlete. You know, the schools benefit, advertising, marketing for the school, just see what they're doing, bringing in other, not just the football or basketball teams, bringing in, you know, the band and come over and talk to cheerleaders and getting everyone involved. I think it's a blessing. You know, just a little side note, I wanted to get this in, but, you know, SAC preps moving into max preps. I want to make sure, you know, people understand and know that that's where it started. It was Sacramento preps ran into becoming max preps, which is a national website that runs all the sports teams. So everything technology-wise to help expose the athlete, let them, you know, like you said, be big time in their time to play ball, which most of them are going to just, you know, play high school and then move on. So it's nice to have all that exposure for them.
Yeah, I would echo that also, just the exposure for the kids. I think it's real exciting. Now with social media and, you know, Facebook and Twitter and all the ones that I'm still trying to catch up on a little bit, kids have a lot of access to that. And those are the kind of kids we're working with. And it's amazing how it's changed over the last at least 5-6 years, I think, with the technology from back to being the VHS to the CDs to being everything online and everything up now, right now, posted and popping. And you guys have been a big part of that. And to go 20 years, so you guys are doing, congratulations, awesome job. And you're doing it right if you're staying around that long. There have been a lot of people here trying it, and congratulations to you guys. Good job.
Thank you.
I know that we spoke earlier about how important it is for officials to get repetitions on the field. But the next best thing to that is looking at film of officials and critiquing, examining, looking for ways to be better. And one thing that the games have given us, and because they're local officials, our officials watch those broadcasts. And it's always a topic of conversation at the next meeting because we want to talk about what we saw that went well and what we saw that didn't go so well, maybe a rule misinterpretation or a good call or a good position on. And so it actually gives us a chance to make our group better. And for that, we cannot be thankful enough.
That's great. Thank you.
No, and I like it too, because as coaches, a lot of the time we're so hyper-focused on what we're doing on the field that I don't spend a lot of time looking in the stands, looking at the cheerleaders, and you get all the wonderful shots in the game, and you're like, wow, there are a lot of people at that game. And just for doing it so long. I mean, I've called plays, I've called miserable plays, and I go, in my head, I'm all, Dimino's going to be all, the imperator of analysis is going to rip me on that one. But it's fun and it's almost family-like, and I know we've all been covered so well with you two in the program that that's the fun part of it.
Thank you.
Yeah, 20 years is amazing. I know I helped on a couple games and filled in for him, the old man there. But what I will say, though, is when he does critique us all, which it occasionally does happen, I continue to get it around the dinner table. And then I get it the next week and the next week, too. But it's been great. And I can't believe it's been 20 years. Hopefully we'll have a little bit better luck. I think the last few times we played, we've lost. So,
well, I promise you I'll do less of that. But that monitor right here is a devil to me because you guys can't see the play over again, or you guys can, and I'm seeing this play 2 or 3. So I have this advantage, right? So to open my big mouth and saying, "Oh my God, you know, I've seen that play 2 or 3 times that coach hasn't seen." But now with all those things you're getting on the sideline, wow, I mean, I just, everywhere you go now, they've got, their iPhones, their big things, their TVs and whatnot. You go to Folsom, and I've never seen so many sideline, like, I'm going like, the players are being brought over to the TV, and they're going through everything, and they're seeing everything I've just seen right now. It's amazing. So I just, I'm glad you guys are joined. Collectively here, with this group of 5 alone, we have done approximately, over the last 20 years, 75 of your games right here. A little less of your case because of the boundary. However, now you're back into this boundary here. And so we've been averaging pretty high. And when you think, other than Jesuit or Folsom or Grant and Elk Grove in their heyday, really competitively right here, out of our roughly 275 ball game, rough, counting all-star games, right here this constitutes about 75 ball games collectively. So we're really glad we could
By
serve
choice and popular demand. We're going to come right back and wrap it up and get a final comment from our coaches and officials. Stick around. We shall return.
Who wants to hear a story?
Once upon a time, there were 3 billy goats.
The tiniest billy goat. Tripping over my bridge. It is I, the biggest billy goat brother.
And the billy goat was so heavy that the bridge creaked and
There's a bridge they have to cross. And great, ugly, eyes as big as saucers, nose as long as a fire poker, and he had the biggest.
The road, the troll, it's only I.
Trick, trap, treat.
Pull up the troll and pull up.
Crushed him to bits.
Up to the hillside.
Well, come along.
Continued up to the hillside.
Why, thank you.
Well, thank you very much for tuning in to our special presentation here on Access Sacramento Hometown Sports. It has been looking back and moving forward, 20 years of high school football in the Sacramento area, and special gratitude to our blue ribbon all-star panel that helped us out today, chew the fat, stir the kettle, and clarify a lot of things to our viewers. And let's go down the lineup, starting from my right on the end. Joe Catolico, Sheldon High School. T.J. Ewing, Monterey Trail High School. Casey Taylor, Capital Christian High School. To my right, senior official, Larry Vaughn. And of course, the Imperator, my co-host. To my left, Brian Jacobs of the NCOA. Mr. Mike Johnson from Franklin High School. And on the end, Mike Dimino, Del Campo High School. And special thanks to our crew, our studio crew here today, and our Game of the Week crew that just received some special accolades from our all-star panel here in recognition of your service here on Access Sacramento and what you do for the Sacramento area community with Game of the Week. For the Imperator, Jim Dimino, I'm Will James. We thank you for tuning in and look forward to catching up with you at the next football season when that rolls around in a short period of time. We're putting our schedule together, and I promised it'll be a good one. And I wouldn't be surprised if the gentlemen in attendance here today are leading their team in a telecast or two we have coming up. Thank you so much. So long, everyone.